Hello. How are
Hello.
you, Dee? Welcome.
How are you on this Valentine's Day?
I'm doing great. You can see I changed our background. We've got some hearts back there, just celebrating a little Valentine's love there.
I'm feeling the love today. I'm feeling the love.
Good, good. Welcome, everybody. Today's event, Ready, Set, Action conversation, is about balancing career and entrepreneurship and life, right? Like in your personal life. So, a lot of people, when they do starting businesses, they're sort of doing either another job or they've got other things in their life. So, today's chat is all about the balance there. So, three actionable tips for those planning to launch their own business. So, this is early entrepreneurs thinking about entrepreneurs. This is kind of early stage conversation we're having today. So, we're going to talk broadly about some tips. And I think, Dee, we might as well start with you, right? So, this is what you do. So, let's hear about some of your experiences and your first tip for this.
Yeah, so I'm living it right now, personally, right? So
Right.
I launched my business last year, and then recently an opportunity came up for me to go back into a corporate role while still doing my business. So I feel it. I am right there with our audience in terms of, figuring out this whole balance thing. And I'm not alone. There's a lot of women that I've talked to in the past year that are either in that corporate role and wanting to move into their own business, or they made that leap and then decided that it wasn't supporting them wholly yet, so needed to find a job to pay the bills while they're working on their dream. So it's something that I think is very commonplace. But how do we, if we're in that corporate role, really continue to work on that dream of entrepreneurship?
Mhm.
And I think the number one point that I wanted to bring out today is it's all around planning, right? You and I were discussing this before we went live. We Each of us only has 24 hours in a day, right? So if we're devoting 8 hours of those days to our corporate job, and then we've got family, because as women, that is
Mhm.
usually in the mix somewhere, whether it's, taking care of a pet or a loved one or a significant other or whatever the case
Or a
may be.
parent, right? A lot of times
Yes.
we'll have both or many of these things. Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So I think it goes to planning. And if we're looking at I'm dreaming of being an entrepreneur, but I don't know exactly what I want to do in that role. I think the very, very first thing that you have to understand is, what is your why? Why do you want to be an entrepreneur? What are you trying to
Mhm.
accomplish with that,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
And then from that, understanding yourself well enough to know what strengths you can bring to the table, within that entrepreneur role. And what is the market like?
Mhm.
There's only so many organizations, and I'm going to pick on one type of career where I see a lot of women kind of going into the same market of selling, like the customized tumblers,
Mhm.
things of that nature. And the market can become very, very saturated quickly
Right.
with that type of product, right? So
Mhm.
even if you are making some unique pieces, you're up against stiff competition. So you really have to understand who is your buyer persona
Mhm.
and how do you market specifically to them so that you can make money, right?
Yeah, and I've always heard you can only sell to your friends, and your colleagues for so long. Like you have to have a plan beyond that. So, like
Right.
like you have to think that way. That makes sense.
Yes, yes. And then, really, taking a look at how do you, in this process, start to build the time frame. How
Mhm.
long is it going to take you, or how long do you want it to take you to create this business and launch this business, right? And then establish the game plan to make that happen. And I'll have more clarity around that in a moment, but that was just under the bucket, I guess, of planning, making sure that you're taking a look at those things.
Mhm. Makes perfect sense to me. So,
Yeah. So, what do you think another quick tip would be for someone that is either currently balancing both roles, like I
mhm.
am, or or wanting to move from A to B?
Yeah, so mine is definitely, it kind of feeds into some of the planning that you're talking about. It's overall time blocking. And if you've heard of that concept, a lot of people talk about it, but I'm not sure they talk about the details of how that might work. So what happens is a lot of times what we find out is a days just sort of happen to us, right? Like we may have some plans, but truthfully, the emails, the calls, the people that step up and have chats, like it all sort of happens to this. And you must decide that you're going to change that. So aside from planned meetings, the day just happens, right? So, you have three calls, but then everything else in between becomes this blend of things, and you get maybe on your mental to-do list you achieve a few of them, and that's it. So what the worst part of that is not just running out of time for work. The true worst part is running out of time for ourselves, for our loved ones. Like that, we have to understand that that is a huge, if we place value on it, time with loved ones. Today's the day of love, right? So,
Yes.
we have to realize that we're affecting that too. And so think about, this is where, we need to think about it. So what happens is when you don't have this time where you're focused for an hour, or you have open time where you're not looking at Slack, not looking at emails, not looking at your phone, like this is where creativity happens. This is where you recharge, self-healing. The A lot of good stuff comes from that. A lot of good ideas, a lot of good planning, so that you're not just spinning. So there's a Parkinson's law. It's an axiom that states work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion. So, in other words, basically, things become harder to complete the more time is given, because it's going to fill up that time. And you're also going to have some stress, and it's going to be daunting and things like that. But, it was published a long time ago in The Economist. But if you think about it, giving yourself 2 weeks or whatever to do something, sometimes that may be working against you. So what you want to do is say yes to free time. And I'll be honest, some people don't like that. They're like, oh my gosh, I was so busy today. And there's sort of this pride in it, right? Oh, I worked so much last week. Oh, I can't. But you know what? I don't want to live that way. I
Right.
want, this quality time. I want to make bigger decisions. So all this kind of plays into the psychology. So what you can do is create your ideal day, block it out: breakfast, walking to work, focus time, block those things. And then you set a time to check emails, check Slack, check whatever those, and then shut those down and go back to focus time where you're working on things that you want to achieve. Lunch, and then back to checking emails, and then focus time, focus time. So whatever that looks like to you, maybe you're going to take a walk, like, walk your pet, whatever it is, like block that out. And then what you do is, as you lead into a week, you create a list of larger tasks that you want to do. I want to start a video series. I want to update my LinkedIn profile. I want to create an email series. And then you put those into your focus time blocks for the next week, and you get more done because you're really separating the back and forth. So that's one of my favorites and it's a challenge because of the world we live in, but that's
Yeah.
one of my favorites, to really trying to achieve um, more of all of that free time and productive time, is to do the blocking. So,
It's interesting because I think it goes back to that thought that we're all good at multitasking
Mhm.
when all of the studies show that we're not. As human beings are just not.
Right,
Right?
right, right.
And, if you don't have that focus,
Mhm.
right, then it's so easy to be distracted and think,
Mhm.
oh, I'm being so super productive because, I'm answering emails and, I'm working on a proposal over here and
Right.
I'm, you know,
Mhm.
planning for the next 3 weeks. I've got all of this different things going on, and that's um, an avenue where, details can fall through the
Mhm.
cracks or
Yeah.
mistakes can be made, right? Is because you're
Mhm.
not having giving your brain a chance to really think
Right.
through everything, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No,
So,
and and I've done it too. It's like sort of this badge of honor, but I'm challenging myself to say, I was done work Friday at 2. Like I feel like if I say that, I'm going to seem weak and like something's wrong. But the truth is, like, there's just value in it, and I think I need to own some of that stuff for myself. But it's a mindset and a shift that is going to take a little bit of work. But I'm going to try, especially this year, to really own that and I'm not necessarily going to call out people if they say it because I understand everybody's got their stuff, but I do wonder if is it a brag or is it a call for help or I'm thinking more
right.
about what that is.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm right there with you. I think my biggest challenge is um, I I was trained over the years in corporate America that responsiveness was important.
Mhm.
So that email,
Mhm.
I'm kind of like Pavlov's dog, syndrome almost
Yes.
because I see that email come in and my initial reaction is I've got to pay attention to it.
Mhm.
I've got to deal with that at that
Yep.
moment.
Mhm.
And it's not, I'm not in life or death kind of
Yeah.
business,
Right. We're not hauling an organ across the states, right? Like it
right?
is. I mean, it's like the cell phones, I'm sure, have accelerated that, right? Like we're on this
Yeah.
path to like this obsessive, stressful world. But yeah, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
I guess give yourself some grace and,
Hmm.
work it into the priorities in
Yep.
terms of how important is that email to
Hmm.
respond to right away and what task is it creating for
Yes.
you,
Yes.
right?
Hmm.
And then go on
Yeah.
with the focus time.
Of
So
course.
that's definitely something that I have to work on as well
Yeah.
for the
Yeah,
future.
I think it's gonna be a constant battle because I even think of younger generations, like with social media, I see this stress and pressure to respond to things and see, did someone comment on what you posted? Like, there's this feeling like you must respond. It's just an extension of, text messages and everything else is that there's this constant availability, and it's a little scary, I have to say, with, everything just when you look at everybody's mental health lately. So,
Yeah, yeah, and then when they come into the workplace too,
mhm,
as entry level into the workplace, how are they going to expect to interact,
mhm,
with colleagues as well as, customers,
right, right,
so from an
mhm,
entrepreneur perspective as well as, in corporate America, that's an impact that we have to consider,
right,
along the way and how to, help them, kinda
mhm,
train them to take
mhm,
that moment,
for sure.
right,
Yep.
and think things through. Yeah. So great stuff. So the the other thing that I thought, in terms of something good to just utilize as a tip is checklists.
Mhm,
We all have our task lists and that gets us, that gets me through the day. I have my to-do list, I have my everything in Salesforce that I need to be working on, and
mhm,
goodness gracious, if Salesforce died, my brain would die along with it, I'm sure, because everything is kind of tied in there from a corporate standpoint. But the checklists are going to help those that are, you know, contemplating making that move from corporate into entrepreneurship, because especially at the very beginning when you're trying to figure out what you want to do, how do you package it, you know,
Mhm.
what everything that I talked about in point number one, you know, in terms of understanding the market and the buyer persona, all of those things, plus just the nitty gritty that it takes to establish in the business from all of the legal standpoints and, you know,
Mhm.
all of the forms that you need to complete and all of that. A checklist really helps you keep things organized. I use a checklist when I'm counseling women
Okay.
who are thinking about going into this entrepreneurship, and it's something that I took from, you know, bits and pieces from the Small Business Administration and other resources to come up with something that I thought worked really, really well
Okay.
for them to just kind of move through that process. But it's really about, you know, those bite-sized wins, you know, feeling at the end of the
Yes.
day that you accomplished what you needed to at work, at the corporate
Mhm.
job, but then also that you accomplished something to move that business idea forward. And still, to your point, give yourself time for family,
Yep.
friends, yourself, right?
Mhm.
Thing.
Yep.
It's all important, and we can't forget ourselves. Women often
Mhm.
do, but
Yeah.
yeah, we need to focus on that. And one of the parts that I love in my little checklist is a matrix that has the four quadrants, and the idea is to organize the tasks at hand into the four buckets of I love it, I like it,
Mhm.
I dislike it, and I absolutely hate it.
Yep. Nice.
So, because if you visualize those areas that you really don't like or you
Mhm.
hate to do, but it's going to be part of just being an entrepreneur and part of business, you know, there's always going to be things that we don't feel that we're as good at, or
True.
we just don't have a lot of knowledge around. You know, for me, it, it's the financial side of the business, right? That I lean on my husband, who is an accountant, you know,
Mhm.
to help me with that. But it's understanding that I don't have the knowledge that I might need in my business for that particular task or that function,
Yep.
right?
Mhm.
And then figuring out, uh, do I seek help or do I learn it myself,
Yep.
right? Do I
Mhm.
take courses? There's lots of courses with the SBA, Small Business Administration, or
Mhm.
SOAR that are free, you know, that you can take advantage of. You know, there's a lot of great free courses that the Ivy League is actually, you know, offering up. Like Harvard's got a number of courses that are free that you can take advantage of too. So it's a matter of just understanding, because when you love or like certain parts
Mhm.
of that entrepreneur journey, you tend to focus on spending most of your time in that area because, hey, it's where you get the pleasure from, right?
Right. Right. Right.
But it may not be what's going to drive the business forward.
Okay.
So it's just really understanding how you operate as an individual, you know,
Mhm.
kind of looking from the outside in, right?
Mhm.
And then making those adjustments, because I don't know that we are all always taught to
Mhm.
self-evaluate in that way, you know?
Yeah. No,
So,
I really like the idea of what you love, what you like, what you hate. Like, because I will, if there's something I don't want to do, and it's even on my calendar somewhere of things or tasks to do, I will definitely procrastinate. Like when I push something back further and further, I could tell I just hate to do it because I don't
yes.
always realize that. And one thing I'll add to that piece of your comment there is that I've seen, I've had some thought process, and I've seen some other people talk about is like, after you do this list and you try to, look at that piece, you decide, okay, what are you going to do yourself? What are you going to either delegate or outsource, right? So and then there's a third piece, which was newish to me, was what will you automate? So,
Mhm.
maybe there's things that you hate or you don't love, but either you're going to outsource it, but maybe there's also an automation for it. Maybe it's a follow up email to people who download something on your website, like automate it, right? So that's an interesting piece to start looking at. How do you handle these tasks? So,
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And that's interesting because there are some women that are, the creative type
mm-hmm.
that are very, very good at, anything that I'm not in terms of the whole art types of,
Yeah.
profession, but they don't like sales,
Mm-hmm.
you
Right.
know? So as an entrepreneur, unless you're going to, hire a salesperson and, or,
Mm-hmm.
at the starting gate,
Yeah.
right?
It's
You're going to have
usually
to
not
take on that
there.
role, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
it's about understanding, well, is it something that I could do? I just need, some, some coaching
Yeah.
or just some learning to get more
Mm-hmm.
comfortable
Right.
with it,
Yeah.
right? And then which
Confidence.
pocket
Yeah.
does that fall in?
Mm-hmm.
And then what do you need to do to kind of get that skill up a little bit for
Mm-hmm.
yourself? And understanding that as you're planning to launch your business is really going to help to create a smoother launch and,
Mm-hmm.
help you, develop your business much faster
Yeah.
than if not looking at all of those parts. And
Mm-hmm.
then at the end, I do a little thing that each week is kind of assessing what was my goal for the week. It's
Mm-hmm.
Friday. So, what was my goal for the week? And then what are some of the things that, um, I did that maybe derailed that goal from happening? And do I
Mm-hmm.
want to stop doing those things for next week? What are the things that I want to keep doing? I had a good
Mm-hmm.
week and these things were clicking on all cylinders. Write that down.
Right.
It's the power of journaling.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, kind of helps to keep the focus, especially when you're balancing between the two different roles, as well as the role of, being a human
Mm-hmm.
on the outside of this, right?
Yep. For sure.
And then, what do I want to do less of? What do I
Mm-hmm.
want to start doing that I didn't do this week that I probably need to, to incorporate into the schedule and the process for next
Sure.
week. So it's really like just evaluating all of that. So I have this checklist, that it's available. If anybody that's watching today would like a copy of it, just, reach out to me on LinkedIn and we can get a copy of that to you. But I think,
Yeah, we'll post a reminder in the comments too, so people can check that out later. So.
yeah, yeah. It's just, the bite-sized wins and, eating that elephant one bite at a time to
Mm-hmm.
get you there, right? And what's the old saying? The road will take you in any direction if you don't know where you're going, or something like that. Uh,
It sure will. It'll take you somewhere.
it'll take you somewhere. It may not have been the original plan. So yeah, and planning is not everybody's best suit either, right?
No,
So it's really
planning,
trying to
goal
get it together.
setting, a lot of people struggle with that. So.
Yeah, yeah.
I find with sales specifically, like for myself, like there's piece, sometimes it helps to break that down into, you could say, I don't like to do sales, but if you often as an entrepreneur, especially a young business owner, you have to do sales at some level. But when you break it down, you can look at, do you not like lead generation, like finding the new leads to talk to? Do you not like talking to them once they're interested? Like when you start to break the sales into buckets of processes, you might find that you actually like talking to people who are interested in what you have to do. You just don't like pulling in the activity. So that's where you might look for specific lead generation help
Right.
or tools on your website to generate leads. So,
Yeah.
you really have to break those things down a little bit when you start thinking about what I want to do. So you start broad, with I don't like to do this, but then hopefully over time you can get a little deeper and say, I actually like to give a great service to someone who needs it, but I don't like trying to convince someone who doesn't want it. And so that's where you're like, well, stop. Like, don't try to sell. Like, maybe there's another way to think of it.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times it depends on that person's, I guess, experience with a salesperson,
Yes.
right? As
Mm-hmm.
to what they think sales actually is.
Right.
And sales is not convincing somebody to buy something that they don't need or don't want.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Sales is all about finding that person that does see value in what you have to offer
Mm-hmm.
and is in need of
Mm-hmm.
that particular product or service at that point in time, or could be at some point of time in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And then developing that relationship so that when they are ready to buy, you're the first
Exactly.
person that they think of.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a completely, I think, a lot of women have this, misconception of um, trying to be aggressive, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and
Yep.
trying to force somebody into buying their product or service,
Mm-hmm.
feeling uncomfortable doing that. And
Right.
I would too, and I've been in sales for 25 years, and
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't want to approach it that way,
Yeah.
know. And it's that fear of rejection,
Mm-hmm.
um, because, hey, our business is our baby. And,
Mm-hmm.
we're very emotional about that and we're
Mm-hmm.
very attached to it.
Right.
But at the same time, if you can remove that personal, feeling of it
Mm-hmm.
and, explore what is that other person seeking?
Yes.
What are they searching for? What are they trying to solve?
Mm-hmm.
What are they doing currently that,
Mm-hmm.
could be putting the Band-Aid on the wound right now and
Right.
satisfying them? And really lead with curiosity and just ask a lot
I
of
love that.
questions rather than, looking at it, I've got to sell this or I'm not going to be able to eat this week,
Right. Right.
you
Right.
know?
Right. What problem are you solving there? So,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, this has been great. So, we will be back next week. So, we're sticking to the Wednesday mornings. And we're going to have a whole series of new topics that we'll be doing with our Ready, Set, Action. There'll always be 3 tips. So, I don't know if there's anything else to say. Departing, we'll definitely post, some you can get that checklist, which I think would be really great. We'll post that in the comments. But anything closing comments, Steve?
Um, just be confident,
Yeah.
right? If you're really passionate about becoming an entrepreneur, be confident that your heart is leading you in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's just a matter of planning and executing
Mm-hmm.
to get you there.
Yes.
And it's not something that is unattainable
Mm-hmm.
because there's so many millions of people that are entering small business every day and
Yes.
launching their entrepreneurship journeys. So
Mm-hmm.
believe
Great.
in yourself
I
and, and you'll get there, get the right guidance and get the right team on board with you.
Mhm.
You'll
That
be
sounds
fine.
perfect.
Yeah.
I like it. So, all right. Well, I will see you next week. I look forward to it.
I look forward to it too. Have a happy Valentine's Day to you and everybody else. And
Yes.
we'll see you next week.
All right. Bye bye.